Kent Ridge Park is a 47-hectare public park located in Kent Ridge, Singapore, between the National University of Singapore and the Singapore Pines Park. Due to its undisturbed habitat and abundant plant life, it is a popular venue for bird watchers and ecotourists. During the Second World War, a hill in the park was the site of one of the last and fiercest battles fought by the Malay Regiment against the invading Japanese army. The Battle of Bukit Chandu, also known as the Battle of Pasir Panjang, 12-14, February 1942. The park was officially opened in 1954 and was gazetted by the National Heritage Board as one of 11 World War II sites in Singapore. In 1955, it is one of over 300 parks managed by Singapore's National Parks Board. The area occupied by Kent Ridge Park and the National University of Singapore was formerly known as Pasir Panjang Ridge, and was originally lowland evergreen rainforest. The park's natural vegetation now consists of groves of tambusu, acacias and delineas. When the first settlers arrived in Singapore in the early 19th century, they grew crops such as rubber, pepper, gambir and pineapple on the ridge. During World War II, it was used as a fortress by the British in the defense of Singapore. Many of these plantations were either abandoned or destroyed during the Japanese occupation, 1942 till 1945, which allowed such crops to grow wild. On 23 February 1954, the Governor of Singapore, Sir John Ferns Nicoll, unveiled a plaque which declared the area had been renamed Kent Ridge to commemorate the visit by the Duchess of Kent and her son, the Duke of Kent. On 3 October 1952, the plaque was erected at the junction of what is now Kent Ridge Road and South Buona Vista Road. The park contains Bukit Chandu, alternatively known as Opium Hill in Malay, after the opium processing factory owned by the British East India Company that was at the foot of the hill until 1910. During 12 to 14 February 1942, it was the site of the Battle of Bukit Chandu, fought by the 159 survivors of the Malay Regiment led by Lieutenant Adnan Bin Sidi against the 13,000 men of Lieutenant General Mutaguchi Renega's 18th Division. The Malay Regiment's position on the hill was overrun by the Japanese, and the battle ended in hand-to-hand combat after the last few defenders ran out of ammunition. All the officers except one, Lieutenant Abbas Abdulmanan, and most of the men were massacred in the aftermath. Sit back and just enjoy my video. formerly used to house senior British Army officers. The last remaining black and white colonial bungalow at 31K Bukit Chandu has been restored and converted into a World War II war museum called Reflections at Bukit Chandu, commemorating the war and those who fought in it. Originally there were two smaller bungalows below 31K, but they were demolished in 1987 to make way for a public parking lot. There are 3 life-size statues and a plaque outside the museum, honoring the Malay regiment and commemorating the lives of those who died. On 14 February, the eve of Chinese New Year, the Japanese again launched a large-scale attack at 8:30 hours with heavy support by intense mortar bombardment and artillery gunfire on the battlefront held by the E Street Malay Brigade. The defenders managed to beat this off and a number of other attacks despite suffering considerable casualties. The fighting also included bitter hand-to-hand combat, and losses on the Japanese side were as heavy as their Malay foes. At 1600 hours, another attack, this time also supported by tanks, eventually succeeded in penetrating the left flank, and the defenders on this side were forced back to the line running from the junction of Air Railroad to Depot Road through to Alexandra Brickworks and along the canal leading to Bukit Chermin further southeast. Owing to the failure of units on both of its flanks to hold their ground, the 1st Malay Brigade had to withdraw at 1430 hours the following day. It was at this point that C Company of the Malay Regiment received instructions to move to a new defense position sited at Bukit Chandu. Bukit Chandu, meaning Opium Hill in Malay, was so named after an opium processing factory located at the foot of the hill. This was also where C Company of the Malay Regiment made their final stand against the imminent Japanese attack. Bukit Chandu was a key strategic defense position for 2 important reasons. Firstly, it was situated on high ground overlooking the island to the northwest, and secondly, if the Japanese gained control of the ridge, it gave them direct passage to the Alexandra area just behind. The British military in Singapore had its main ammunition bases and supply depots. One of their military hospitals, Alexandra Hospital, and other key installations, such as the Normanton Oil Depot, located right next to Alexandra. C Company's position was separated from B Company by a big canal depot. Oil was burning in the canal, which flowed from the bomb out and severely destroyed Normanton Oil. The burning oil in the canal prevented C Company's soldiers from retreating further back. The company was under the command of 2nd Lieutenant Adnan bin Sidi. He encouraged his men to defend Bukit Chandu down to the last soldier and was killed, together with many of his fellow soldiers, in the last desperate defensive battle at Pasir Panjang. The Japanese military pressed on their attack on Bukit Chandu in the afternoon, but this time they did so under the guise of a deception attempt. They sent a group of their soldiers, dressed in captured British Indian troops uniforms, with their faces and skin smeared with dirt and soot, and wearing of turbans
as the
to
fire
pass off
spread,
as Punjabis,
Private
to
Yakub,
present
along with
themselves as
another
light
soldier,
Indian soldiers.
grabbed his
In the
breath gun,
British Indian
crept
Army,
through the
C
fire
Company saw
until
through
they
this trick
reached the
as they
enemy
knew
and
that
silenced
soldiers of
them.
the British Army typically marched in a line of 3 columns while the supposed Punjabi soldiers in front of their lines were moving in a line
The
of 4
next day,
columns. When
we
they
took
reached
up
the
a
Malay
new
regiment's
position
defensive
at point
line, C
226.
Company's troops opened
This
fire,
hill,
killing many
Bukit
disguised
Chandu,
Japanese
was
soldiers.
to be the
Those who
site
survived
of our
escaped and
final
hailed back
stand.
to friendly lines. 2 hours
We
later,
prepared
the
for the
Japanese
battle
forces
ahead,
launched an all-out
forming a
banzai
defensive
charge in great
perimeter
numbers in
around
an
the hill.
attempt to wipe out the Malay troops had through sheer numbers and
Soldiers approached the
overarching
hill.
strength. The
They
attack,
appeared to be
conducted
Indian troops,
again with
but
artillery
Lieutenant
shelling
Adnan
and
was
tank
not
support,
fooled.
overwhelmed the
Together
Malay
with Lieutenant
regiment and
Abbas,
the
he
defense
opened
line
fire on the
eventually broke.
disguised Japanese
Despite being
soldiers
greatly
and put
outnumbered
an
and
end
short
to their
of
ruse.
ammunition, with only a few grenades at hand and not many rounds for their machine guns and rifles left, and much needed combat supplies, including medication and bandages. The Malay regiment continued to resist the Japanese. Both sides engaged in fierce hand-to-hand combat as well as using bayonets. Adnan was seriously wounded but refused to retreat or surrender and instead encouraged his men to fight to the end. Soon after, with the whole area of Pasir Panjang falling under Japanese control, Adnan, who was badly wounded and unable to fight, was captured instead of taking him prisoner. The Japanese continuously kicked, punched and beat him before tying him to a tree and stabbing him to death with their bayonets. Some sources claim that Adnan was brutally beaten up before being thrown into the tied-up gunny sack, which was then stabbed repeatedly by his Japanese captors, while others indicate that they stabbed him to death before hanging him upside down from a tree.